It really messed up the relationship.
Mm.
And sadly, I was never able to really form a relationship with my parents. There was no help for families. There was no counseling. That is what would be needed. We didn't dare to talk with each other about the horrors of the past, and so we could only have a superficial relationship. We enjoyed being together, but there was always the anxiety that the past must never be mentioned.
Indeed, and we quite rightly, remember on days like today, 75 years of the liberation of, starting the liberation of those horrible concentration camps. But we don't focus on stories as much like yours, do we? Where, you may well have escaped the horrors of such camps, but I guess whilst thankful to be alive, life was nowhere near ideal, was it? You were robbed of your childhood, if you like. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. Of course, I was a child, and I did childish things, and two of the foster families had their own children, so I was with children. But I was always very much aware that other children had parents. I had guardians, and that's a huge difference. I always was anxious that if I didn't do as I was told, and that was very difficult, I would get sent away again.
So so after escaping what was a fearful place, you still lived in fear, maybe?
Well, not consciously all the time in fear, but it was always in the background. I wasn't like other kids. I was different.
Yeah. You lived through something I learned in history lessons at Ruth that I've not forgotten about. Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, back in 1938. You were only 3 at the time, but your father, being a lawyer, I can imagine he was targeted in that.
Well, he would have been arrested that night because whilst the crowds were rioting, the Gestapo went to all the Jewish and Gypsy homes and arrested the men. But my father got wind that something was going to happen. He didn't know what. And so he took my brother, who was 6 at the time, and they walked on the edge of the rioting crowd. That was the safest place for Jews to be. Nobody would imagine you were Jewish if you were out there. And had my brother been at home, they weren't arresting women. My mother was safe, and she was not Jewish anyway. But my brother counted as Jewish, and the Gestapo would probably have beaten him up in anger at not getting my father.
Interesting.
So he saved both their lives, but it was a shocking experience for my brother at only 6.